Hello, everybody. I'm so excited to be here today. It's really weird, even though this is pre-recorded and I'm talking to my computer alone in my room. I'm really excited to be with you and sharing this moment with you. And thank you so much to Brian for this opportunity. I'm super excited to share my story and help you all along on your ACUHO-i intern journey. So how this is going to work today, I'm going to share my screen in a few minutes and kind of do a presentation that I made. You may or may not see my face during the presentation. If not, you can listen to my lovely voice the entire time. And I'll tell you a little bit about my story with questions intermingled that you can start thinking about as ACUHO-i interns going into your second year of your grad program or whatever timeline you're on within your grad program. And then kind of thinking about what's next for you. So I'll be posing some questions to start that process and kind of fishing everything out. So give me 1 second to share this, if this works. I'm not a tech savvy person, so we're gonna get there. Okay, that's up. Let me share my screen. Okay, perfect. I think it worked. Bam. Okay, hopefully you can see this presentation. So this is called Navigating Newness, my journey as a new hashtag essay pro, because I'm a millennial. I love hashtags. It just is what it is. So going into this, a little bit about me. So as you all know, my name is Codie Frank. I'm currently an academic advisor for the Business Foundations program at Virginia Commonwealth University in Richmond, Virginia. I really enjoy my position. I like how flexible it is, but also how structured it is. I have a lot of room for creativity amidst like the daily tasks that we have to do. I'm also an introvert and a Virgo, so like my mind is very process and structure oriented, so it's something that really works for me. My pronouns are they and them, and I also come with a social justice approach to my work. Even with academic advising, I try to come in with a social justice and appreciative advising approach, treating all my students with positive intent, focusing just on them and their unique experiences, and catering my services, recommendations, and just general conversations with students specifically to them and their experiences. Before this, I worked at the University of Central Florida in Orlando, Florida. That was my first position, and I'll get into that and kind of my journey from grad school to Florida to here. But I also graduated from Christopher Newport University in Newport News, Virginia in 2015, and then finished my grad program in higher education student affairs from the University of North Carolina at Greensboro. So I've done a lot of hopping around to a lot of different states and different places, and with still being in my first like 3 or 4 years of being a professional, there's still a lot of things that I have to learn, but I've learned a lot in my past few years after graduating from my grad program that hopefully I can share with you today and kind of help you navigate what it means being a new professional. So, okay, Codie, great. Why are you here? I have talked a little bit about that, but I like to be witty and funny, so go along with me on this fun journey that we're doing today. So really, I'm here to share my experiences with you in adjusting to change as a new professional, bouncing around between new jobs, new places, and how that can be really daunting, but also something that hopefully through this presentation, you have a few more things in your toolkit to help you kind of process and figure out what's next for you. So I want to start with asking yourself, what kind of job are you looking for? Probably the most important question that you're thinking about right now, and probably you're getting hounded by this question daily in your grad program, in your life, your family, friends are like, what are you gonna do after you graduate? It's totally okay if you don't know, because when I was in graduate school, I had an assistantship at Wake Forest University, which is about 45 minutes away from UNC Greensboro, in fraternity and sorority life. And when I was an undergrad, I was involved in my fraternity and the interfraternity council. And going to grad school, I was like, yeah, totally, I want to be a Greek life advisor. So I was a graduate assistant for fraternity and sorority life, and after about 2 months, I was like, yeah, no, screw that. I am not doing fraternity and sorority advising professionally. I enjoyed my assistantship. I enjoyed the office I worked in, but as a long-term gig, it was not for me. But through that, I learned that I really enjoyed social justice work, and that was kind of, at least at that point in my life, the lens that I wanted to go into in my first professional job. So with determining what kind of job I wanted, I was comfortable with programming. I really wanted something logistic focused that I was working directly with students. I also wanted some experience with policy. So going into my first job at the University of Central Florida, I was the coordinator for LGBTQ services, and going into that, I was really excited for the new opportunity and being able to expand my programming experience, my student affairs experience. It was a supervisory role, which was something that I wasn't used to as a graduate assistant, but it was a good experience to, you know, go ahead and get under my belt so I could say that I actually did work in supervising and graduate assistant. So with that, going to your first job, you have to also ask yourself, what are your non-negotiables? So the things that you're absolutely like, I will not be swayed on this. This is what I want, or this is what I don't want. It's important to know your non-negotiables going into your first job, because if you fluctuate on your non-negotiables, you can ultimately be a lot more unhappy in a situation that you kind of like didn't follow through with who you actually are or what your values are. So for me, going into my first job, my non-negotiables were, I wanted something that was LGBTQ focused. Being involved in LGBTQ related things has been something that I've done throughout my time in undergrad, grad school, and going into my first job. I wanted to do that regardless of what my job was, but specifically if that was going to be my job, like that was the lens that I wanted to go into and make sure that I had a focus on. Another non-negotiable of mine was something that was close to campus, or ample housing that was around campus. I didn't want to live in a super big city, like a downtown city, but I also didn't want to live in the middle of nowhere. So Orlando was a really nice balance of pretty metropolitan, but I lived in between like the downtown piece of Orlando, and the University of Central Florida was about 20 minutes away in the suburbs. So it was a nice distance between being able to drive 10 minutes to the city if I wanted to, or going to Disney World if I felt like it, which is a little overrated if you go too much, but it's fun if you go every once in a while. And then being able to drive 15 minutes to work in the morning. So going into my first job, I really was looking for a community at work and outside of work. I do, at least going into a job, I do want that disconnect of work and life. It's fine if they intermingle, but I couldn't do residence life full time, for example, because I need that separation of home and work. Some people are really comfortable with putting them together. That's totally fine. If that works for you, definitely be sure to look for that. But the kind of community that you're looking for really can influence what job you end up applying to and ultimately accepting. So for me, Orlando is a very, very vibrant LGBTQ community on campus and off campus in the community. Nightlife was very vibrant there. It had a very big arts influence with local performers, artists, a really big food scene. So Orlando really is a go-to place for, if you're looking for a really intentional, diverse, inclusive community, go ahead and start looking for those places. I was also, when I was job searching, looking in Washington, D.C. I was looking in Columbus, Ohio. I applied to a job in New York City. That's when I learned I didn't really like the big city when I had an interview in New York. But aside, that's what the job search process, internship process is for, to really narrow down like what you're looking for. And even if you're not in a functional area that you're like, well, ideally I want to do X, Y, and Z, you can find jobs that still have similar experiences to what you want to do, if that's your ideal location or ideal university. You can just get your feet on the ground, you can plant your roots and then move into a position later on. So it's important to be creative also about what kind of job you're looking for and what experience you're looking for, because so many jobs, as I'm sure you've experienced already, can give you experiences going into a lot of different functional areas. So when I was in grad school, I was also an ACUHO-i intern at the University of Massachusetts at Lowell. So I was up right near New Hampshire for a summer, and I did housing operations. So that job specifically correlated really well with my academic advising job, just with the use of technology, a lot of desk time, but also a lot of time working with students and making sure that you can accommodate their needs. And if not, like what kind of solutions can you come up with? So what you're doing right now may be a useful function, maybe useful going into your first job, or even down the road when you're applying to like assistant director and director roles like years down the line. So another important question is, what's a livable salary for you? With this question, it can definitely be very loaded. A lot of people don't like talking about money. I'm very public about my salary expectations, what I want, what I need, and also like going into a job, like what salary I actually make. So this is something that you need to have a conversation with yourself or your family if you're married or have a spouse or a partner where you're moving with other people. Sometimes your first job in higher education, if you don't have previous experience, is going to be an entry-level position, which is not the highest paid. If you're currently in higher education and you're doing grad school for a master's degree, to move up to an assistant or associate director level position, awesome. Hopefully you'll get a pay raise. Either way, my first salary in higher education was the highest one that I was getting, because before that I was in school or working in food service. So anything was an improvement, but be sure to consider this when looking at private and public universities, depending on like what you're looking for a job, because some public universities can pay their people more. You have to consider if that, if university you're working for is a part of a union, which may have more benefits, or if you're working for a public institution that has like less funding for certain areas, if they're quote unquote less essential. It's a lot of things to think about. So when I went into my first job at UCF, their salaries are online. So if you're going through a state institution, a lot of times they're run by the state government. They're always run by the state government. So most of the times you can find salaries of people online. So when I was doing research for different jobs, I was able to find that the person that was in my job before me was making $37,000 a year. And when I got my offer of $34,450, I believe. No, it was under 34,000 was the first offer that I got. And then I got an increase, I got a 1% increase to go over 34,000. So it was like right on the cusp of that. And I was like, what's the difference? Like, what's going on? And, years of working in the same position can give you, a lot of times universities will do percentage increases. COVID definitely throws a lot of that off. So your first position may not have a pay increase for a little bit, if there is one, or, depending on what the university is doing, that's a question to ask somebody when you're going through the job search process. But so for me, going to my first job, I was very concerned about a livable wage with living in Orlando, which is a very expensive city to live in. Florida is a very expensive state. So it was something that I wasn't cognizant of until I got there, that, oh no, this is like not a livable wage for me. Like I was not living comfortably. I was living paycheck to paycheck. So it's important to really consider like what your needs are. If you have medical needs, if you have to have certain access to services, can this job allow you to live in the place that you want to and also afford those services? And also if whatever you enjoy to do in your free time, does the salary allow you to enjoy your hobbies or enjoy traveling and other things like that? And also, does your job allow a lot of time away from your office? So can you actually take a vacation and travel if that's something that's important to you? A lot of things to think about in the moving parts of work and going into that next step. For me, it was something that definitely was a turn off a few months to like half a year in, when I was really feeling the pressure of like not being able to do what I wanted to do with the job that I had. And the job was very hefty in its responsibilities for the lack of pay that it was giving its people. So I say that because in the grand scheme of things, like UCF was not the fit for me. The institution was a good fit. I enjoyed what my position was doing and the impact I had with students and the community. But ultimately you have to be real with yourself of when do you need to say no? And being able to, saying no isn't just saying like, I'm done with this job in that kind of finite sense, but it's what's working for me and what's not working for me. And sometimes in your first job or an assistantship, if you've had to move an assistantship before because it was just like not the office for you, not the position for you, sometimes you also don't vibe with your supervisor, and that's okay. It's important to know when to say no and to go back to your non-negotiables of, oh, I didn't know this was a non-negotiable for me beforehand, but now it is. So for me, a non-negotiable was like, I need a 9 to 5. Programming was not my ideal place to be long-term because my job was very programming heavy at UCF, and it was a lot of late nights and then going back early in the morning, and just physically I couldn't keep up with it. And it's important, going back to the community point, I also moved to Florida with like only job in mind. Like I didn't know anybody when I moved to Orlando. And I learned in the long run, I needed to have my people around or some semblance of a support system. And those are now my non-negotiables of, that's why I moved back to Richmond, because I'm originally from here. And I had to learn how to say no to UCF of like, yeah, I gotta go. Like I wasn't in a good relationship. I was in a struggling work environment and I just couldn't keep up with everything. And I went home for Thanksgiving and I was like, Mom, I cannot, like your girl's out. So that was a conversation I had to have with myself of, yeah, I think it's time for me to go. And there was a lot of pressure for it being like my first year and a half in a job. I started that job in July of 2017, and I was having the conversation with my family and friends in Richmond about coming back in probably August or September of 2018. So only a little bit over a year, which a lot of times I'm sure you've heard from your professors and advisors in grad school that you should stay in your job for the first 2 to 3 years if you can. I think those unsaid rules are pretty toxic to people who like may have really struggling situations in their first job. So, you know, you sometimes do have to take a chance and hope that going into another position, making sure you talk about your experience and what did and didn't work and why you're looking for a new position so short into your time in another job. So for me, I fell into academic advising because I was like, I'm moving back to Richmond, period. I need a job. What job do I think I can do at least for a little bit to get myself off the ground? And I had a friend who was already working at VCU who recommended academic advising with what he knew about my job. And wham, bam, boom, I applied, I got it, and I fell in love with it as a functional area. So sometimes you fall into a functional area that actually works better for you in the long run. And now academic advising fits a lot of my non-negotiables that I didn't even know were important for me, like the 9-to-5 structured environment, but still room for creativity. You really have to take time in these, you know, this month or two for your ACUHO-i internship in your last year or however long is left for you in your grad program to really think about what's important to you, your values as a person, your requirements in a job, and also if you have like requirements based on your family or your living situation, it's really important to consider those going into a job, because sometimes you are in a position where you have to accept something because you're like, grad school's over, so is my assistantship, need a paycheck. And it's important to do what you need to do to have a job, but also know that like, how can you use your position in whatever you're doing after grad school to move on to something else if you're not happy with it. And my last question for you all to ask yourself is, how can I center my happiness and new beginnings together? So I am not a person who often likes change. I like structure. I like to have an idea of what's going on. I'm not a spontaneous person. My friends would tell you that like I have to plan like my weeks and like personal time with them, like weeks out in advance, sometimes even a month in advance. Obviously COVID threw that into a tizzy and I don't really have a schedule anymore. I only remembered today is Wednesday when I'm recording this. I had to look at my phone because I forgot what day it was. So in the grand scheme of things, I'm a more organized person, but I can go off on tangents, so excuse me. But your happiness and new beginnings can go together based on really what you're looking for and how you feel you can fit into your first job. You may be in a position where you're like, I don't know if I like all the responsibilities of this job, but I like the city and I like the location and it's a community I'm familiar with or a community I want to explore. Cool. If you have 2 of your 3 requirements, then kind of go with those and make sure that they can fit into what you need to do. But for me, going into VCU, what was important to me was community, having some kind of job structure. I needed a paycheck, but also learning to embrace like what you want to do outside of work. So for me, I'm very involved in the local LGBTQ community, whether it's with local activism, supporting performers, performing myself. Art is very important to me. So that plus my community, plus my family being here and my friends, Richmond was the place that I needed to be. Aside from the allergies, it's been close to perfect. And so for me, this is my happy place. And this is where I wanted I wanted to start over my professional and adult career. But for some other people, your home community may not be conducive to you, whether it's for whatever the reason is. So if you're looking for something new and that's your non-negotiable, great. Like find something new, find a place that you want to go, and find a job that can kind of support you getting there and support you enjoying your life wherever you decide to go. And going back to in your happiness and new beginnings, if you have a minimum paycheck that you need, keep in mind like certain states will have certain state minimums for their jobs. So in Virginia, my job is $40,000 for entry-level professionals. So I was already getting a pay increase from Orlando, also with a cheaper cost of living. So if, you know, you can kind of put those things together and figure out like how to actually afford things and just like afford and enjoy your personal life outside of work. Because sometimes your paycheck, this may be the only paycheck that you're getting if you don't work a second job or you don't have a spouse or a partner supporting the other half of that. So your happiness is central to where you want to begin, if you want to start over, if you want to enhance what you're already doing. And I'm glad that I was able to share a little bit of my story today and hopefully provide some points to think about going forward, because really this last year and a half, 2 years of your program are the time for you to learn about yourself, learn about your passions. What do you want to do with higher education? But also, what do you want to do once you're done with higher education? Do you want to potentially go to school again? Do you enjoy the research piece of education? Are you doing it because you need to get a master's degree to go into the field that you want to? Whatever the reason is, it's important to come to terms with what that may be and then go into a field after this so you can enjoy your life as a person and also as a professional, because it's a field that can definitely ask a lot of its people, not in a bad way. It's just a very engaged, intentional field. And yes, learn what your engagement level is going to be with that outside of work. Or, you know, if you want to continue being engaged outside of work, that's absolutely your prerogative, and you can really do what you want to with your degree, whatever works best for you going into your first job. So that is all I have for my presentation today. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, but I'm super thankful for the opportunity, Brian. Thank you so much for having me today. I'm always here as a resource for all of you. If you want to send me email, you can add me on Facebook, you can add me on LinkedIn, whatever you want to do. My email is frankcj@vcu.edu. Brian hopefully will pass something out. I'll give him information and pass it out to you. To follow up with me if you have any questions about whether it's about academic advising, social justice work, anything else specifically you wanted to know about my experience that may be helpful for you, please know I'm always here as a professional resource, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your ACUHO-i internship and the rest of your time at grad school. Good luck job searching, everybody, and keep it real and be safe. Bye.